All right, so I was just going to record a video going through example 4 on the review. I'm going to go through all the questions, so feel free to skip around if there's one you needed to see. One thing I do want to say about this review, even before we go, some of these we're going to get messy fraction answers. I did make them work out a little bit nicer on the quiz, so don't stress the fractions too much on these. I mean, you will have a calculator if it came down to it, but I mean, looking at the quiz, those questions will work out nicely. I do not believe you'll get any fraction answers on this section tomorrow. I'll double check that, but they definitely worked out nicer than some of them on this sheet. So just a heads up as you're going through these. But let's get started. So we have two functions. I highlighted the f function in green, the g function in like a purple color. So the first thing you always want to pay attention is which function you're looking at. Make sure you plug it into the correct function because it sucks if you do the wrong thing, even if you do it right. This first one, we're plugging into the f function. So when you plug it in, you replace the x with what's inside our parentheses. Like, so instead of doing negative 4x, we're going to do negative 4 1/3 plus 3. So if you work this out, that would be, if you multiply the negative 4 and the 1/3, that's negative 4 thirds plus 3. Either put this in a calculator, or if you wanted to, you could, I wrote a little bit too big. You could get a common denominator. Like 3 is really 9/3. So then negative 4 plus 9 is 5. And then the bottom would be 3. But like I said, don't, like, if the fractions is the worst thing in this first example, don't, like I said, it'll work a little bit nicer tomorrow. So try not to let the fractions get under your skin too much. The next question, and pay attention because this, I believe this is true on the quiz as well. If you already see a function you've already figured out, like we already figured out what f of 1/3 is, we can kind of substitute that in. But my advice in this question is figure out what f of 1/3 is, figure out what g of negative 2 is, and then kind of plug it into what we have. We're going to have 2 times, and we figured out f of 1/3 from the last question, like right there. So I'm just going to, so it doesn't get in the way, but we'll have 2 times 5 thirds minus 3 times, and we're going to figure out this new answer because we haven't done this yet. So I'm just going to kind of do this on the bottom, g of negative 2. Make sure you're looking at the g function up here. Make sure you use parentheses. That's a common, like, especially when you have powers and negatives. If you don't put parentheses, or if you're not careful, but negative 2 squared is positive 4 plus 2, you should get 6. So that's what g of negative 2 is. So I'm actually going to erase this bottom part just so I have a little more space. So if we multiply this out, 2 times 5 thirds would be 10 thirds. 3 times 6 is 18. We want to get a common denominator, or just put this in a calculator. Like I said, you could just put this in. But 18 thirds, you could multiply that by 3. So 18 times 3 is what? 36, 54. And then subtract this, you would get negative 44/3, which is kind of crazy. Like I said, you won't like I promise you on the quiz tomorrow, they're going to work out a little bit nicer. So if the fractions are what's like giving you the worst like stressor with these, don't worry too much. The process is more important, that you find those things, make sure you multiply that answer by the coefficient in front of the functions there, and then do like your addition or subtraction. The next one is just like a fraction. The nice thing is we already figured out the bottom. The bottom's negative 44 thirds from the previous result. Like g of negative 2 is what we, oh wait, no, it's not. Sorry about that. That was our final answer in this question. G of negative 2, sorry, was, I erased it, but that was the 6 we found earlier. That's like where we did negative 2 squared plus 2. We got 6, but that was g of negative 2. So we don't really need to redo that if we use the previous result. So sorry, the bottom of this fraction is going to be 6. Sorry about that. We haven't found f of 1 yet, so let's figure that out really quick. But f of 1 would be negative 4 parentheses 1 plus 3. It's that green function I highlighted. If you work this out, this should be negative 1, and that would go on top of our fraction. So we would just have -1/6. You could see if you could simplify, but basically when you have like f of something over g of something, usually you just put them on top of each other, like your two results, and just see if you can simplify the fraction. But I mean, this one's already simplified. Like for example, if you had like 2/6, you could simplify that to be 1/3. So that's pretty much it with a fraction one, even though like, ooh, a fraction. Nope, just figure out the two results, put them on top of each other. Sometimes like in the future, maybe when we do other like with variables and stuff, sometimes there's things you can do, but honestly, with numbers, just put them on top of each other, divide it out. Um, Sometimes there's really not a whole lot you can do either. All right, these bottom three. So I'm just going to kind of erase. All right, so oops, I still want to see the functions though. Okay. I'm going to get that out of the way. I'm sorry, I'm not like a YouTube maker. Probably obvious by now. But composite functions like f of g of -2, you kind of want to work inside out or left to right. You want to figure out what g of -2 is, and we've already done that. So we can use our previous result, like g of -2 was this 6 from these previous ones. So we don't need to redo it. So we really have f of 6 because g of -2 is 6. Just to kind of show you g of -2, I'm just going to write it over here and erase it. Remember that you plug it into the g function, add 2. If you work that out, you should get +6 because -2 squared is +4. Just make sure you put those parentheses in your calculator, but just to make sure we're clear. So we got to just plug 6 into the f function. We are done. So you kind of like get your inside answer and plug it into the outside function. So it's sloppy. That would be -4 times 6 plus 3. You're doing the green function. Kind of work that out. -24 plus 3. That would be -21. All right. These last two, like I said, we didn't see many, if any, of these last two. It's the same idea. We're instead of just plugging in numbers, we're just going to plug in variables and kind of clean it up the most. But keep in mind, when you're plugging it in like an x into your functions, your answer is going to have x's in it. Like you're not going to get a single number as your answer. So if you're plugging in an x, you're going to get an x in your answer in some form. So g of 2x, we're looking at this g function. So I'm actually going to take a second. Let's zoom in on this g function. So we're going to replace the x with 2x. So I was kind of like a computer nerd growing up. So I mean, I just think of it as like kind of like copy and pasting in place of it. So you would have 2x squared plus 2. Basically, we replace that x with 2x. We like kind of copy and paste it in place of that x. And there's really not much we can do. I mean, you can clean this up a little bit. Just be careful. It's the whole 2x squared. So you got to like square both parts. Like, so that's sloppy. That's like, let me try to rewrite that. That was supposed to be 2 squared. And you got to square the x as well. Kind of like take the power to both parts. So that would be 4x squared plus 2. And there's nothing you can do with that. That's it. All right. And then this last one, it's similar to this composite one we did here, except we're doing it with variables. So when you have like f of g of x or g of f of x or something like that, just figure out what the inside part is. But g of x is just this x squared plus 2 up here up top. So we really just have f of x squared plus 2. So we're going to plug this into the f function. So I'm going to just zoom in on the f function really quick. You're going to copy and paste. You're going to replace this x with that x squared plus 2. Like, so we're still going to have that -4 in front, parentheses, then replace that x with x squared plus 2, and you're still going to have that plus 3 on the outside. And that's your answer. I mean, there's not a whole lot we can do to clean this up. I mean, we could distribute and combine like terms. Like that would be -4x squared. -4 times 2 is -8. Bring down the plus 3. Don't multiply that because it's not inside the parentheses. So we don't distribute to the 3. Then you can combine the -8 and the plus 3. That would just be +5. So I hope this helped a little bit. Just keep in mind on this review, like I said, um, especially on the top with the numbers, like with the fractions, it won't be quite as bad on the quiz. I do promise that. So if you're feeling good with these, I mean, you should have a good time on the quiz. Don't let the fractions be like the focus on how to do these questions, because like I said, they're going to work better tomorrow. So I'll stop babbling, but let me know if you have any more questions. Have a great day, everyone.